Okay, this is our third meeting that we have for Thursday night, and Nelson has talked on two different occasions. He's going to continue talking about the Constitution and what there are as far as the number of constitutions. So this is, he considered part 3. So Nelson Dias is going to talk now.
Welcome everybody to this evening's presentation here in Dallas, Texas, in January 2025. What we're here tonight to talk about is how to live free on the land. We're going to begin tonight by starting with the Declaration of Independence, which is the first document of 4 that comprise the organic law for these United States of America. 4 organic laws are the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union, which is number 2. Number 3 is short version is the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. Finally, this Constitution for the United States of America, which is the Constitution of the United States. So tonight we're going to repeat what we've done in the past, which is to listen to the Declaration of Independence. And I suggest that if you would be so kind, those of you that are in our gathering, if you kindly listen and prepare to comment on any part of the Declaration of Independence that you hear. Any insight you can offer regarding freedom and how to avail ourselves of it when we're in the midst of a military occupation from Washington, D.C., that would be helpful, because the sovereign king and popes from Europe were brought under control by limited government through the Constitution of the United States. The problem is they're constantly looking to usurp us as free people. So we all know the Declaration of Independence was initially penned, presented on July 4th, 1776, and I'm going to ask the late John Fitzgerald Kennedy to do the honors of reading tonight's version.
And in the cause of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth separate and equal stations, which laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, in each respect to the opinions of mankind, requires that they behold these truths being self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. Government becomes destructive of these men.
Start over.
Among the powers of the earth, the separate and equal stations, which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, in each respect to the opinions of mankind, requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. Behold these truths are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are instituted among them, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form, as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. These will dictate that government long established should not be changed for light and transitory, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new gods for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having indirect objects the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance. Unless suspended in their operation, till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish their right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them, and formidable tyrant over. He has called together legislative bodies in places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the repository of their public records, for the sole purpose of keeping them into compliance with his nature. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with family service the invasions of the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative power, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, they remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither, and raising the conditions of due appropriation of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary power. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices, and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial, for punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the work of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taking captive on the high seas, to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hand. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an indistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
You are using vinegar. If your goal is to use
Every stage of these threats has petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conscience stamped by the ties of our common country. Disavow these usurpations would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of conflict with it. We must therefore acquiesce to the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of a right ought to be, free and independent states. That they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Imagine if all of us today would take that same pledge, commit to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Declaration of Independence is the first article, the first document of 4 documents that comprise the organic law of these United States of America. I'm going to start reading the Declaration of Independence again, and then you hear some part of it that you'd like to comment on. I want those that are here to do that and share whatever insights you believe might help anyone who's watching this presentation. The Declaration of Independence, when we look at it, the Declaration states it's the Declaration of 13, let me read what it says exactly. Not all constitutions are printed properly. This one that I have here is not an exact copy as far as the style, S-T-I-L-E, of the letters. So I will give you what I believe to be the actual proper upper and lowercase writing. One thing I believe is true is that when there's a capital letter in front of the word, it indicates that that item is subject to something or someone else. And that helps us to understand what the Founding Fathers were trying to communicate. I think that probably goes back to all sorts of treaties from England and Germany and all the European powers. So the headline says, the unanimous, also all lowercase in a word indicates it's a common law right. It represents a common understanding. So the word unanimous is lowercase, the word 13 is lowercase, and the word united is lowercase. So the heading of the Declaration of Independence, the first line says, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. So there were 13 colonies. They all agreed it was time to separate. So they basically put their thoughts and grievances into a written document. And these negative events have been growing for probably 20, 30 years and just getting worse and worse. One thing I think we don't really think about, at least I do not, is that Parliament was one of the big perpetrators of crimes against the people. Parliament were similar to, say, the current Congress in the United States. They are exerting undue authority by extending jurisdiction all over the land and the people and every microcosm and square foot of the United States and its territories. So, the states of America, while they were united colonies, the word state, could you get the mic back to Glenn for me? He's wants to make a comment. Yes, Glenn.
my comment is that Franklin said that, see, what they were doing is they were just printing their own money. And the Crown prohibited that, forced them to use the pound, the British currency. And Benjamin Franklin said that the prime cause of the revolution was their failure to provide an honest money system. And, you see that happening today.
Could you explain what money system was not honest? Was the money system in England and Great Britain not honest as well?
It was extra money. So everything was a debt and had interest on it, and which forced the Crown to have to collect taxes. And but that was the same stuff that's going on today. It's extra money. And that's why I think cryptocurrencies and all the stuff that's happening today is we're in the middle of a sea change, where the banksters are going away because we don't need them anymore. And there'll be gold and silver, true, but there'll also be Bitcoin, and that's the people's money. Anyways, does that answer your question?
Over 150 years before the Declaration of Independence, the first peoples began to populate the lands of North America on the East Coast from Europe. Many were fleeing for religious reasons. Some were here because of the opportunity. And so the first line is, when in the course of human events. There were events happening as we're going through right now. There's human events happening all the time. At that time, it became necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. So we were connected by virtue of most people here were of English or European descent and spoke English, most of them, I believe. And so they had a political band that was connected to the British people there. And then it goes on, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. So they were basically saying, we have been operating as free people. We were subjects of the king, but we had a certain level of independence that the king had and the parliament had kind of gone along with for a while. But I think at that point, like Glenn says, they needed taxes or whatever their commitments were, and the dishonest money supply was now creating a pinch on people's labors. And I think the people smelled that and didn't like it, because as we read some of the history, the redcoats were over here and their governors, there were royal governors who were pinching the people. As a side note, one of Benjamin Franklin's sons was the royal governor of New Jersey at the Declaration of Independence. Right after the Declaration of Independence was signed, they had asked, the Congress had asked all of the states to create their own state constitutions. The one in New Jersey was written 2 days before the Declaration was signed, July 2nd. Shortly after the Declaration was signed, Benjamin Franklin's son was arrested, jailed, shipped back to England, where he had married an aristocrat woman from high society in England. And so Franklin, I think many of us think that he was potentially a traitor. Not so sure, because he had to suffer that stress of having his son arrested and basically cast out of his country. Then he goes on to say, the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them to equal station. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So when we're offended today by authorities that have no jurisdiction, or we believe they do not, we're required to declare the causes against them. So the peoples of America said it's time for a separation. And it must have been really tough going with people on horseback and ships and stage wagons. What kind of communication must there have been for people to all get together and decide this is what we're going to do? And it goes on, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Excuse me one second.
Well, I think they come up here instead of having anyways, the political bans. You think about political bans. What are political bans? If you think about it, that's all the laws. They're basically telling the king to take his laws and put them where the sun doesn't shine. I think it was the Stamp Act that caused, because what I read is they were printing just enough money to facilitate business, and they didn't print too much because if they print too much it causes inflation, but they needed to have enough money in circulation, so they were just printing. And then the Stamp Act came along, and it forced them to use the British currency. And then the Brits were passing all these laws over in England that were making them effective in America. The Boston Tea Party, I'm sure you all heard of Boston Tea Party, that was over a 3% tax, and nowadays, they talk about a 75 or 80% taxes on stuff. I mean, they certainly put up with a lot less than what we put up with, number one, and number two. It was really only a very small percentage of the people that were doing this. There was a lot of United Empire loyalists that after the War of Independence, they left the country. They went and settled in Nova Scotia and in Canada. And they're called the United Empire loyalists. It was only like, 3 to 5% of the people that were, but they just would not put up with it. And the militias, I think the militias were really important. Because I think that's really what, because everybody was armed. You gotta understand, everybody was armed. You were required to have your arms. If you went to a public meeting, you were required to have your arms with you. And if you didn't, you'd get a fine. If you were more than 2 miles out of town and you didn't have your arms, you'd get a fine. A lot of that was because of the hostile natives that were there. And so it was just, it was automatic. Everybody had to be armed. And so then what they were doing is, and I talk about this in my videos, what they were doing is, some of the militia members would go up and hunt down British troops and blow their brains out. Think about it. And they had some of them that were really good. They had these, what do they call it, the Kentucky long rifle that they used that were, so snipers. They had snipers too. Anyways, I'll give it back to you. Sure, sovereigntyinternational.fyi. It's all one word, sovereigntyinternational.fyi. And I've got a YouTube video, this will wind up on YouTube probably. Sovereign living. Anyways.
People like to talk about the Declaration of Independence, but who has read it? Who has read it multiple times? Who has actually studied it? Wait, you still want to say that?
Well, no. I've read it. I've read it multiple times. I use it in my YouTube videos. If you read the Declaration of Independence, it's basically a list of grievances. Okay. If you read the Declaration, it's basically a list of grievances, and the same stuff is going on today. And exactly the same stuff. You read that carefully, you can see that it's all happening today. You know, history repeats itself. It absolutely does. There's actually a Chisholm versus Georgia, a Supreme Court case in 1792, I think, where the court said that, I'm trying to think of the wording they used, says, yes it did, yes, but that wasn't what I was thinking of. Said that a state makes a contract that dishonest state refuses to discharge it. And there was another site that said in there, it said, a dishonest state refused to discharge it. It said there was another one. It says that I said it. I've seen it so many times. It said that the governments are made for man, and that our servants have first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. And the same stuff is going on right now. And that's what I'm putting. I'm preparing an answer in my lawsuit, in my federal court case. And that's what I'm putting is history is repeating itself. And I use that site because it's happening now.
Talk about what the objective should be for someone who knows that they are meant to be free, but don't really sense that they are. They're kind of afraid of what could happen to them if they begin to assert their sovereignty. What's the objective for each individual?
Well, first of all, you have to understand what's happening. So you got to study and learn the law, learn what's going on, and plan what you're going to do. First of all, you have to understand. It said in the Declaration of Independence, you heard it. It's the king is waging war on us. Well, yeah, they're doing that today. They're waging war on you, and so you got to treat it like warfare. Everything is warfare. And number one rule in warfare is you never ever tell the enemy what you're going to do. You sandbag them, you set them up. It's warfare. This is all out, knock down, drag out warfare. And you have to treat it that way. They are the enemy until you educate them to the point that they know that you're the king, that they are the enemy. And it's knock down, drag out, all out warfare. And you have to treat it that way. You never tell them what you're going to do. You set them up and you break it off in their house.
What's the objective?
Well, the objective is
Each individual and then the community of free men themselves.
well, you get it to the point that the ultimate objective is you get court cases to say that, like McCullough versus Maryland, that says that the people of a state cannot yield the sovereignty over them. And there's lots of court cases that talk about sovereign citizens. And I know they like to use the sovereign citizen as a bad name. And I break it off. They bring that up in any court case that I'm in, and I make them regret it because there's a whole bunch of reasons why. But again, you have to know what's going on and use it to break it off in a back.
So is it not just theoretically possible, but is it actually possible to live free on this land while we are surrounded and infiltrated by a false government that is making war against us?
Oh, I agree. I think you can, for sure. But it's not going to be easy. They don't want their slaves getting away, number one. But, anytime, if I get stopped by the cops, it's because there's a license plate light that's burned out or a dirty license plate. That's what happens for that. And so I think that they have my license plate number. If we, the people, cannot yield the sovereignty over us. And so people talk about contracts. Well, there's no contracts, okay? For them to assume the contract is actually treason. And so that's what I bring up in my case, is when the U.S. attorney or the prosecutor comes up with something, I automatically respond, well, you know, my fourth great uncle's Bill Livingston, and the government can't commit treason, so they cannot possibly be representing the state or the United States. They're operating in their private capacity, and they're actually, they're 14th Amendment citizens, and they're engaged in an insurrection. And that's something that Nelson pointed out to me today. It's brilliant under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Anyways.
Explain the devolving sovereignty, but it can't devolve. Go deeper into that.
Well, I talk about that in my videos too. It says, at the revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people that Joe was talking about earlier. That's Chisholm versus Georgia too. So,
explain what actually, how does
so
that,
think about it.
Step back before we go to that speaker, I think that's keeping us back.
go to the left or the right now?
So anyways, so think about it. If it devolved onto the people, that's mean it evolved away. Okay, it was originally on the people. It evolved away because of our own ignorance. Okay, and Mark Passio always says the root word of ignorance is ignore. And so because of our own ignorance, we got mixed up in what the government views to be contracts, and we basically abdicated, okay, our sovereignty. Okay, that's the way they look at it, is we've given it up, we've waived it. And of course, if you know the law, that's treason for them to be doing that, but until you bring up the issue, they're just going to go ahead and do it and railroad you and sell you into slavery. And so then when it devolved, it devolved back onto the people. It evolved away and evolved back.
Talk about how we're one people, and that is each man is his own state, and we don't need a group like they try to say we need to join together to make something happen.
That's true.
Relate that back to 1776.
Well, again, the requirements of a nation is you got to have people, land, and resources. But each man was a sovereign. Okay. Matter of fact, I've seen cases where that F.R. Johnny Johnson case, where the lawyer made the argument, which was kind of surprising, but where the lawyer said, "I am a state." Okay. And these other guys are a state. We the people, and if you read the court cases, that's what they say. Okay, so I am the state, and so I've got immunity under the 11th Amendment.
Am I correct that that word is written in all lowercase when they write it in the judicial decision? The word state is lowercase. The word state, or common law state, each man.
You know, that's possible. Off the top of my head, I couldn't say, but I can tell you that it probably is. But the point is that we, the people, are kings and queens. We have all the rights of the king. I don't know what's wrong with this thing. It keeps fading in and out. Anyways, we have all the rights of the king, and so each of us individually, and they like to badmouth us. And if we don't really know what that is, then they're going to have their way with us. But anytime they bring it up with me, I bring it up on their backside.
So when did the sovereignty devolve on the people? To clarify, was it at the Revolution, or was it at the peace treaty?
Said at the Revolution, according to the court. So that's when, think about it. When we took up arms and said, "Screw you," we became kings, right? We became kings and queens. When we took up arms, they say that all political power comes at the barrel of a gun. Well, you know, and certainly when Groups of us are important. We need to network with other like-minded people, but if you know the law and understand the law, everybody individually, it has all the rights of the king. And I'm in this federal court case, and the judge is basically just let me make my arguments. And I've been in the courts dozens of times. I've been to the U.S. Supreme Court 5 times. I've had cases dismissed so fast, your head is good. I've had them dismissed so fast that I wasn't even able to effect service. That was probably a favor. They did me a favor, because then I didn't have to go to the expense of effecting service. The only thing the judge has said in this case is, you have this day to get your service effected. You know?
How do people who are not as aggressive and knowledgeable as you, how do they learn to exercise it? How long does it take?
Well, it's a journey, it's not an event, okay? You have been enslaved over your life, okay? You were born as a slave because they went and sold you into slavery with that minor estate.
By pledging our future labor.
Yeah, however you want to phrase it. But the bottom line is that a slave is making you work for the government for nothing. And when you turn up dead, there's a minor estate, but that's all comes from the Vatican. Okay, that's the Vatican that did that. And so and they're Satanists. And so I still, there's different schools of thought. I think it's satanic myself. You know, I could have my mind changed, but I think it's satanic. And the bottom line is that when you turn up dead, there's an account, a Treasury direct account for a minor estate. Look it up. It's under Title 31 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 363.6. And so there's a Treasury direct account with your name on it, and somebody, when you turn up dead, then the government claims that thing, and that's how they pay for all these wars. That's why there's all these wars going on. That's how they pay for them.
Anybody else have anything they want to say at this point? Okay, I'll continue with the Declaration of Independence. So we declare the causes, requires that they, who are upset, should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Later on here, they talk about the colonists didn't want to separate. They were fine with living here under a just government that gave them their freedom. But when the tyranny got unbearable, they had to act. So it continues, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, not grant these rights, secure these rights. Governments are instituted among men. So what is the purpose of government? To secure our rights, to make our rights secure. So when we think of government, purpose is to secure my rights. So anytime a government agent communicates with us, my question is, how are you helping me secure my rights? And to secure these rights, which are among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are rights that are secured by the government we instituted, deriving their just powers, meaning the government's powers, from the consent of the government. The consent of the government. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it? Do we need another free man to help with altering or abolishing the government that's become destructive of taking life, liberty, and property? We do need we could have assistance, but at the end of the day, a free man should plan to stand on his own, to be able to repel any infractions by a government that's become destructive. So it says, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. So the founding fathers that wrote the Declaration of Independence and agreed to proceed with the separation from Great Britain recognize history, that we can suffer a lot of aggravation and abuse and infringement of our liberties until such time as it becomes insufferable. So we by nature will suffer with a government that's not proper. So this, to me, is why some of us have become completely intolerant of the least infraction of someone who's in government infringing on our life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness. We are as alert to respond as they are for just not turning on our signal before we turn right on red or something of that nature. You know how the government will take up our time and try to find us and do things of that nature at the slightest infraction. Well, some of us have decided, well, that's going to be what's good for the goose is good for the gander. For the slightest infraction of my life, liberty, and property and pursuit of happiness, they must answer. And that's what we have learned to do. And if you go to Glenn's channel and others, you'll find that we're having more and more success all the time and basically taming the beast that has grown up around us. So all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. And this is the grievances, this is them declaring the problems that they have with the Parliament and the King. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them, meaning the people, under absolute despotism. It is their right, the people. It is their duty to throw off such government. So how do we do that today? How do we throw off government when someone with a government agency supposed authority approaches us, communicates with us, attacks us? How do we throw off such government without arms? So down the road, we're going to talk about the organic law. These 4 documents that comprise the organic law is the means by which any one man has the entire U.S. Army at the disposal. We have the whole military. You know how when someone gets captured in Mexico or kidnapped somewhere, what happens? The Marines get called out, the Black Hawk helicopters for one man. Well, guess what? When they attack us on our own homeland, one man, the Founding Fathers said, we will put the entire armed forces of the United States federal government that we're going to create with the Constitution, they're at your disposal, every man. Now, how we activate that is what we're perfecting. But that's the ultimate goal for me, is to be able to say, okay, you want to infringe on my life, liberty, and property, you're going to have to handle the point of a gun that's coming from the United States, which is what we the people created. We the people created the United States. What is the difference between, who can explain for me, the difference between the United States of America and the United States? Most of us have just allowed ourselves to just presume and assume that they're exactly the same and there's no difference.
The United States is the federal government. The United States of America is all the states. That's we the people. But the United States is just the federal government.
Correct. That's an excellent explanation. And so later in the second document called the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union, the phrase in Article 1, which was in 1777, Article 1, a year after this Declaration of Independence was written, it says the style, meaning the way that we're going to write the name of this nation, this country. And I would go a little bit further than Glenn did as far as what is the United States of America. It's defined, described, Article 1 of the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union, where it says this confederacy, small c, a common law, this confederacy, the style of this confederacy shall be, quote, the United States of America, end quote. So to me, the United States of America is my country. The United States is the government, the federal government. And under the original first 100 years, states gloried in the common law. Everyone understood they were free. They understood if they damaged someone, committed a crime against someone, or injured their person or property, there'd be a price to pay. And that would be affected by trial by jury, which of course was one of the items of the grievances. The Parliament and the King and the Redcoats were denying us that trial by jury, which was a common law right going back to the Magna Carta, if I'm not mistaken. If I ever state anything that you think might be incorrect, please offer your opinion. Don't let me continue, because I like things to be able to be solid. When people learn or relearn what they knew at one time, and create a solid foundation for where they stand. So, after the absolute despotism been reduced under absolute despotism, Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, it is their right, their duty to throw off such government. Who thinks that we have a duty to throw off such government? A free man has a duty when a government official, government employee is infringing on the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And someone mentioned the other day, Joe, I think he's here, mentioned infringing. And the way I'm looking at a flag, you can't see it, but the flag in this room does not have any infringe. It's not infringed. So that flag represents the country and the power of the U.S. Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Space Force. They're all at the disposal of one man, and we have the right to call upon that power to have the freedom that we're entitled to. Do you have any new insights on the infringement? Yeah. So the gold fringe flag, to me, is how go ahead.
I believe that's how we start getting the military involved. Because, one, not only is it a infringement of our rights, it's, yes, it's under Hamilton law, maritime law, but actually that flag, which actually is stating it's a military installation in the courtroom. So when you're, I think, in my opinion, by then being having the wild card warning against the Constitution, now gives us the right to definitely call the military to the military installation.
You know, Nelson and I were talking about the infringement. So I decided to start looking up in some dictionaries. And I found a Oxford English dictionary, which is one that Crown happens to use, by the way. Yeah. Anyways, this was a 1901 Oxford dictionary, and it said it had several definitions for infringe. Infringe can mean sewing a fringe on something. That's infringing. But it also means breaking a contract. And so, where that flag is, they're telling you, in my opinion, that it's they're breaking the contract, and that's perjury of oath, quite frankly, because their oath of office trumps everything. That creates a trust, and that's why it's called treason. Treason is a breach of trust. But so that's what the gold fringe flag is. They're telling you that they're breaking a contract.
Good. There is a place of a municipality that has actually replaced the flag that was posted, the gold fringe flag, at the city council chambers where they conduct commerce and business. That flag has been replaced, the gold fringe flag has been removed, and the Title IV flag, the official flag of country, has been installed. As far as I know, that's the only place I've ever seen that to be the case. And Ed brings up a good point that the gold fringe flag flying in a courtroom is potentially a violation, a military violation of this Constitution. There is more than one Constitution. We actually have not been able to confirm the exact number. There's definitely two Constitutions. They're named differently. There's a couple changes in between the two. So if I'm approached by someone with the gold fringe flag who, according to Glenn, they're telling me that they're breaking the contract, correct? The contract is their oath. So even just approaching me when I'm minding my own business and not committing a crime of treason, felony, breach of the peace, then by definition they have broken their oath, perjured their oath, and are a criminal. So now what does a free man do? A long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object, he This is a design, there's a design to reduce us under absolute despotism. It's by design. The grand design.
And that's the same thing. Those things are going on today. A little thing here, and a little thing there. It's not like they encroach and then they back off. They just encroach and they encroach some more and they encroach some more and they encroach some more, and that's it. You know, you wake up and you're a slave. And so that's what they're talking about. A long train of uses, evincing a design to reduce it to absolute despotism. Despotism is just another word for dictatorship. And so that's what that's all about.
If that happens, then what is it?
It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards. But I think we have a good government, but the problem is a bunch of pirates have taken control. Now, we've got someone in office right now in the federal government, but he's only one guy. And so we all have to be doing our part at our local level and wherever we happen to be. It can't come from one guy. It's got to come from all of us.
Right, we the people. We the people. Each one of us is one of the people. Together, two of us, two or more is one people. To provide new guards for their future security. Obviously, we lost our security. Those rights that were secured earlier, they talked about to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. We like to, we see YouTube videos, people say, I don't consent. Meantime, they get thrown in the back of the car and shipped to jail, and they don't get out for who knows how long. They're saying the right word, I don't consent. So the question is how we can throw off such government.
Unfortunately, so many of our fellow citizens are constantly illiterate. We don't throw off the government. Then what are you going to replace it with? That's a real problem, because unless people are governed by God, they will be ruled by God. I'm sure you've heard that quote over and over again. Our Constitution is what? Suitable only for a wholly moral people. It's entirely unsuitable for any other type. So when people evolve to despotism or tyranny or whatever, it's really kind of sort of the natural state of men who are not Christian gentlemen, unfortunately. But, we have the opportunity to restart the world all over again, which is what they intended to do in 1776.
Joe, you're missing the point with common law. The jury can do whatever they want to they's guilty. So, if someone realizes they can be put to death by doing something wrong, they'll think twice before they do it.
Yes, the right to trial by jury is hours upon hours upon hours all by itself. It does pay to... Hold on one second.
There's a lot of different sciences. The science of sociology is a relatively recent science, and it's not all that well known, but it deserves a certain degree of study. What has been found in the science of sociology is that people then are deterred from committing crimes to the degree to which it is probable that they will be caught, and not to the severity of the punishment. In other words, if they don't think they're going to get caught, like Adam Schiff, and Nancy Pelosi, and Schumer and all that group, they will go ahead and commit treason in broad daylight, right in front of everybody, and the whole world. because they don't think they're going to be caught. If the probability of getting caught is high, it suppresses crime. But if this probability is low, it doesn't do much at all.
Tremendous insight. Some of us think it's just the severity of the punishment. That's the deterrent. I understand. I said, I'll speak for myself. I would have thought and have thought that surely the severity of the punishment is brought. Death penalty is not. So the probability of being caught is key. So, how do we use that sociological fact to catch government agents who are offending the organic law?
How many people are here are for the death penalty? Are you for the death penalty? In case of rape, we're going to agree just about that. Are you for the, how about for you, Deb? Glenn? Glenn? How about for you,
I'm not opposed to that.
All right, so here's the problem
That's
that,
a good point.
say again?
I missed the point. What was the point?
I said I don't trust the guy.
Trial by jury.
They have corrupted the juries, or they try to do jury trials now. But here's the point: it does not obey the law at all. 100% death penalty for prosecutors and judges who disobey the law. But my case and in yours, the government just simply didn't obey the law. And every week, you can look on Fox News, and there's always some poor devil who got convicted 30 years ago, and they're coming out with new DNA-related evidence that shows he was innocent. I heard some person say, the prosecutor and the judge may not know who committed a crime, but they certainly know who did not. They know by a person's character, their past, and the circumstances of the event, and all of the circumstantial evidence around it. They know who did not commit a crime. And people are committed to horrible crimes. They are convicted of horrible crimes all the time, and they are absolutely stone cold innocent. 60% or more of the people in prison never committed the crime for which they were convicted.
Going to Joe's comment about the possibility of being caught. See, I think, I don't know how many have heard of Patrick Byrne, but you ought to watch his docuseries because he talks about the enemy within. He talks about how Obama had basically effected a coup, and they were planning on having Hillary Clinton win against Trump. That's why they said Trump ain't gonna win. And then after Hillary was in for 8 years, then Michelle was gonna be president for 8 years. And by then they would basically overthrow the whole thing. And so, that's what they had planned. It was essentially a coup. That's why Schiff and Pelosi and all those guys were just ignoring the law. They didn't think they'd ever get caught. I think Joe's right. They all know that the penalty for treason is death, okay, under certain circumstances, especially during a time of war, and they're going to get their necks stretched, I'm sure of it. But Trump threw a wrench into the whole thing. The military, actually, there's elements of the military that when Kennedy got assassinated, they said, well, we got to put a stop to this stuff. And so they've been working on it for 30 years, 40 years. And they invited Trump to run. And I think his job was to jerk the chain of the deep state and get them to expose themselves. And he's great at that. Everybody hates him guts, and so he just jerks their chain, and they react and expose themselves. And so I think it was just brilliant. Anyways, back to Nelson.
Thank you, Glenn. So I encourage people to go on YouTube and just start allowing the Declaration of Independence to be read to you when you're kind of not thinking about anything, and over time you'll start to hear what it actually says. It'll become part of you, so that the seeds of liberty, the tree of liberty, will spring back up in our lives.
Joe brings up a good point too. I'm in court, but he brings up the good percentage of the courts. I just wondered if anybody's ever tried to state that. I do have a 99.6% good percentage all the time. The man's flawed anyway, even our government's flawed. So I don't know if there's a way to use that. I guess so. Maybe it's a possibility.
Why do you say it's our government? It's not my
Well,
government.
no, okay, I misspoke. Let's throw this out there. I don't of course.
What is your government? What's the next government?
I would. And for me, I believe that it was created by the people, our forefathers. We should get back to it. Anyway, I don't know if there's a way to use a written percentage as a report.
I went in front of at least 5 judges, probably 7 more than that. And in the end, the Court of Criminal Appeals said that the trial court never acquired jurisdiction and there were no crimes, there were no felonies. And I went before Bobby Bell on an attempt to get a bond. And I had the people who had given me a bond before, the bond agent, was in the courtroom. And the district attorney and the judge said to my lawyer, what bond will you make available? And my lawyer said, we'll do a $100,000 bond. That's a murder bond. You can get out on an accusation of murder. And the district attorney said, no, he's a flight risk because I have my own airplane. So they said, no. So the judge turned to the bond people and said, what's DeRusso's limit? And the bond people said, he's come to every hearing, he's a good guy, he has no criminal record, he has no limit. And the judge said, everybody's got a limit. Will you do $1 million? Which is unbelievable, right? It's 10 times bond. They said, yeah, we'll do $1 million. He has no limit. The judge said, everybody's got a limit. Will you do $5 million? They said, yes, he has no limit. We'll do $5 million. The judge said, everybody's got a limit. Will you do $100 million? And my bond people said, we have Lloyd's of money, London's money behind us. We'll do $100 million. And the judge said, nobody has no limit. Will you do $300 million? We're talking about, it wasn't even a misdemeanor. I had been thrown in jail and kidnapped. They had no authority to arrest me. They had nothing. And the judge said, no, throw him in jail. He turned down a $300 million bond. Now you tell me, who on earth could have the slightest respect for our legal system at this point? No one complained. There was no authority, there was no jurisdiction, there was nothing. They kidnapped me and tried to kill me.
Anybody want to comment on at what stage would the current martial law legal system have acquire, when would they acquire jurisdiction? Give us a circumstance that they would acquire jurisdiction based upon the guns, the handcuffs, the jails, the prosecution.
If there's a breach of the peace, then they have jurisdiction. But the deal, the way it works is that you have to commit the breach of peace in front of the cop. Now, other people can see you breach the peace and they can do a citizen's arrest. But any cop, if you do a breach of peace in front of the cop, then he can arrest you. Or if he has a real warrant, okay, and you don't see too many of those around. Some entry in a computer system is not a real warrant. He's got to have the actual piece of paper. He's got to have a court seal on it. He's got to have a judge's signature on it, and that kind of stuff. And actually, I looked at Joe's warrant that they used to arrest him, and that looked like a real warrant. That's one of the unusual ones that I saw that was real. But it was all color of law. I mean, the Court of Appeals said that the lower court didn't acquire jurisdiction in the first place. There was no crime, and completely vacated the whole thing. And so now there's litigation. They're going to sue the butt off. But meanwhile, I mean, they've abused him, and he's upset. And you can't blame him a bit. It's complete corruption. There's no justice in these courts.
Someone speak about a judge versus a court. And both exist at the same time today.
Actually, most of the time, these judges aren't judges. They're courts masquerading as judges. So think of it this way. At common law, they're a judge, okay? But they can't seek common law. It's all civil laws, and when a statute's involved, the courts have ruled that when a statute's involved, the judge is an administrator. So really, what it is a bill of attainder. Okay, it's a bill of attainder, a bill of pains and penalties, and it's unconstitutional under the Constitution. The founding fathers went through the same stuff, and you see that stuff in the Declaration of Independence. You see it in the Constitution, and most people don't have a clue about it. And you can't expect these lawyers to tell you because they're feeding off the system. And so they'll never tell you. But what it is really a bill of attainder, because a bill of attainder is a proceeding, it's a legislative act. Okay, a bill of attainder, if you look it up in a law dictionary, it's a legislative act targeted at a certain group, a group or an individual, in which they give you a non-judicial trial. Well, that's exactly what it is. Because when the judge, when he's dealing with the statute, he's not a judge, he's working for the legislature. Okay, so anything the judge does, he's an executive administrator. Anything the judge does is actually a legislative act. And he's not a judge. And in fact, there's court cases that say that the legislature is incompetent to grant judicial power to people that aren't judges. And so he's not a judge, he's a clerk, a lot paid for a clerk masquerading as a judge. And there's even court cases where I saw a court of appeals case, U.S. court of appeals case, where this guy had filed a petition for writ of habeas corpus to the court of appeals. And the Court of Appeals came back, this was like in the late 1800s, the Court of Appeals came back and said that you can appeal a case that's before a court, but you can't appeal a case that's before a judge. So what they're saying essentially is that the judge was a clerk, he wasn't a real judge. And so you gotta understand that habeas corpus is a civil law remedy. Some of these extraordinary writs are civil law remedies, and some of them are common law remedies, like a mandamus is a common law remedy. And so civil law remedy falls under, civil law. Civil law, is all of the codes of the government. Those are civil laws. Common law is the unwritten law. Okay, that's 800 years of jury trial decisions. And so that's the unwritten law. The civil law is the written law, the codes, all of these codes.
Please repeat the phrases, common law, jury, conducts the trial, all that.
Right? What about it?
So please give us those lines.
So at common law, the common law jury, the trial by jury does not mean a jury trial. Think of it this way. If your car breaks down and you go and bypass the fuel system with a piece of rubber hose, then you just jury rigged your car. Well, that's kind of like a jury trial. Okay? A jury trial is something they do in an emergency. And so it's an emergency type thing. Okay? Remember martial law. It's all martial law. So jury trial is something they do in an emergency. A trial by jury, the jury conducts the trial. The jury will call the witnesses, question the witnesses, determine the law and the facts of the matter, and even pronounce sentence. And it's not subject to appeal. And so the jury conducts the trial. If there's you know what a judge is called? A judge is called a jurist. Because you mind, you're interrupting things. Hey, you guys. If you want to talk, why don't you step outside? Anyways, so a judge is called a jurist because they're supposed to have a lot of experience on juries, okay? So it goes back to the old days when they had jury trials, trial by juries, I should say, where they would actually invite a jurist, someone who had been on a lot of jury trials, to sit in on the trial by jury to advise the jury on different points of law. Sometimes there's people on the jury that don't understand the law, so they need to know they have a question about something, and so then the jurist is someone who had been on a lot of juries that would sit in there and advise the jury on different points of law. But the bottom line is that guy that's sitting in there, the jury can do literally anything they want. Okay, and that guy has nothing to say about it. The jury just conducts the trial. They do the whole trial from beginning to end. They call witnesses, they question the witnesses, they determine the law and the facts of the matter, and they even pronounce sentence.
How do we explain, I don't know the answer to this, if a warrant, if the official has to be in possession of a warrant, how did in the West, when there was a wanted man, a wanted poster, how did that work? If there was a wanted man out on the run with thousands of, hundreds of square miles, when a marshal knew that he had the wanted poster with the bounty, or a bounty hunter, what means were they able to capture that supposed criminal without the warrant in possession is the question.
Well, how do you know they didn't have a warrant in possession?
You would get rewards if you located that person and gave a link or the
I would have to ask the question, which I don't know the answer, were there wanted posters on the 13 original colonies at that time?
There is a prevailing delusion that you can put together a schemata and you have people who are voters or electors, and you have judges, and you have prosecutors, and if they do this in this way, then everything will work out and justice will be served. Unfortunately, the entire thing just doesn't work, and I really had my face rubbed in that. I went in front of 5 different judges. Every one of them committed multiple criminal acts of depriving me of my rights, and the whole thing just doesn't work.
You just stated they were judges.
So they weren't judges.
So you keep
Well,
saying
were they?
they weren't judges, that's the
They were
problem.
what? Paid for in courts, masquerading as judges.
So you're saying that if what? If that,
Common law, solve that problem.
They're not judges, that's the problem. You're actually stating something that's not
It
true.
was bill of attainder.
It's a bill of attainder.
okay, so they were posing as judges.
Correct. They frauds. They're frauds and what kind of flag?
So what I'm telling you is you're right. And that kind of fraud permeates that group of people known as our government. They're not our government. They're a bunch of criminals. You know, what's his name? Cuomo murdered 12,000 elderly people during the COVID. I mean, this is unbelievable. I don't think there's any way to make this thing work, absent the participation of a lot of really honorable men.
And I claim that the means to effect lawful government was handed down to us in the organic law, which is comprised of the four documents we talked about. We're still only not even 20% through the first document, the Declaration of Independence of 1776. For repetition's sake, I'll repeat. First organic law document is the Declaration of Independence. The second organic law document is known as the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. The third organic document is the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And finally, this Constitution for the United States of America, which is known as the Constitution of the United States. The original Constitution was agreed upon September 17, 1787. Constitution of the United States is, for me, this Constitution for the United States of America. Remember, I claim the United States of America is my country. The Constitution of the United States is the federal government that was created in order to bring the chains on the government that was created to supervise the states, because evil state men were in states usurping power during the time of 1783 to 1787. So we knew we had to have a federal government with certain limited powers, and that this Constitution, not that Constitution, this Constitution. So it's this Constitution. In the preamble it says what? I'll read the preamble. Because it takes a long time, because you have to be intelligent and educated in order to live as free men. You can't have stupid people being free. It's an oxymoron. I act stupidly at times, and when that happens, guess what? I'm not a free man. I'm incapable of being free because of my limitations. But then once I become not ignorant any longer, it says, we the people, this is the preamble of this Constitution for the United States of America. But the heading is the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution is an indentured contract. It's a contract. The Constitution is a debt instrument of the United States. The United States became indebted to the people. I stand over the Constitution of the United States. The free man stands over the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States is this Constitution for the United States of America, which is the country. We created it. Now it is this confederacy. It's all common law. It's every man is a king or a prince actually on the land. I don't know that I'm a king per se. I think a prince is enough. we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, in order to establish justice, in order to ensure domestic tranquility, in order to provide for the common defense, in order to promote the general welfare, in order to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain, a religious term, and establish, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So that's my current understanding. It seems to be working for all the pieces fitting together. But we only have about 5 or 10 minutes left. I'll just finish the rest of the paragraph here in the Declaration of Independence. So so after we designed to reduce the people of America under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty. Do I take it as my duty? I always knew it was my duty, but I didn't know how to effect the duty. Usually, if I have a duty, I need power to perform the duty. So I didn't understand the power that we have as men to effect the duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. Now remember, we're still in 1776. The other organic law hadn't happened. The war hadn't ended. We have 6-7 years of war against Great Britain until there's finally a treaty of peace. And then there was 4 years of peace when we were dysfunctional, trying to operate the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union with something that was written in the heat of war. The Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. Not a lot of thought went into it. I shouldn't say that. Not enough thought went into it. Because when the bullets are flying, we're just happy to stay alive, and we're in the foxhole helping each other beat off the King of England and his regiment. The history, actually it says, such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies. So we're declaring what has happened. And then it says, and such is now, July 4, 1776, the necessity which constrains them, the people, to alter their former systems of government. So we're altering the former systems of government. That's the move we made. We said enough's enough, time's up, you've had your chance, we tried to make peace, you said no, Parliament said no, you're going to send the redcoats over here and start attacking us and killing us, and then we're about to get into all the grievances of what that government was doing. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpation. We're all victims of repeated injuries and usurpation. All have an indirect object. Why are they doing it? Why the gold fringe flag officers of the capital G government, from the municipality all the way up to the federal government, why are they, what is their direct object? It's to establish the direct object is the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. And if they finish to prove this, that facts is submitted to a candid vote. So from then on, so that pretty much ends the part of it. We'll try to pick up from there. I think we talked a good amount about those issues of history and people watching this. Feel free to contact Glenn have further comment by, one last comment by Jim.
I've never heard of the declaration. They talk about in war enemies and in peace friends, right? Remember that part?
Yep.
All right, so right at the moment, about 60-some-odd% of all the signs on the Panama Canal are right now, as we speak, written in what? Chinese. I know the Han Chinese very, very, very well. To them, in war enemies and in peace enemies. They will take over the world and murder you and your children in order to make room for them, for their people. So we're at war on a number of fronts. Thank you. And good night.
I have heard that the Chinese have a 100-year plan to do exactly what Joe has just indicated, that they're going to infiltrate governments and lands around the world in order to make room for the teeming population of Chinese. If we go to British Columbia, my understanding is 20% of the men and women and children in British Columbia today are of Chinese descent.
They call Vancouver Wongcouver.
Vancouver is called Vancouver.
Yeah, that's what they call it in Canada, is Wongcouver. There's Chinese billboards all over the place.
Now, we're not racist, but if people of Asian descent are going to obey communist rule and act upon that, then we must object and use the powers that were granted to us that were secured. Our rights are secured by the organic law. So regardless of the color or ethnicity of an American, someone, I believe, can, if they have a heart of a free man, they can join and exercise the very powers that the founding fathers enshrined in the founding documents. And all free men, we welcome them to do that. But the minute people get together and usurp the rights to have a tyranny over these states, we must use what the founding fathers used. And that's what we're learning how to do. July, that's now in January 2025 here in Texas state with Sweetness. That's the land that we're on, not the state of Texas, which is a corporation. Anybody have any final thoughts, comments before we close?
Thank you for speaking tonight. Is it January the 30th of 2025?
January 30th, 2025.
Our third presentation for Thursday night.
So third Thursday evening presentation for this is basically the Republic of Texas, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you.